Hi, welcome to my EntreLife, and I'm Rebecca Palmer, your host for today. And today we have Nina Reyes joining us live from Toronto. I believe you're in Toronto anyways today.
I am in Toronto today, and it's a lovely summer day here today.
Wonderful. It's pretty nice here in Ottawa today as well. And I also think it's a great day for a podcast. It's a little bit cooler. It's earlier in the day, so we're still very motivated and ready to go. And we have a whole amazing day ahead of us as well. So, Nina, your company, Communications Rebel, and where did Communications Rebel start? And quickly, give me a quick summary of what Communications Rebel does.
Sure. So Communications Rebel started when I lived in Los Angeles. I'm currently based in Toronto, but I used to live in Los Angeles. And the idea came about actually after I attended my first World Domination Summit. That was back in 2011. And for those who don't know what the World Domination Summit is, it sounds crazy, but it's not. It's a wonderful conference that happens every year in Portland for people who want to live an unconventional life and who are craving community and service. So it's a conference for people who want to do life and work a little bit differently. And it brings together all sorts of super inspiring entrepreneurs, freelancers, people who just have regular jobs even, but want to do life in a different way. And the atmosphere is just so amazing and community oriented. And after my first World Domination Summit, I was so inspired to do something in addition to what I was doing back then, which was working full-time in a marketing manager role. And my day job was pretty, what you would probably describe as like your standard American 9-to-5 job. I would do my job. I would like it on most days, not like it on some days. And what I mostly didn't like about it was that I felt like I couldn't really make a difference. I felt like there was a part of me that wasn't expressed, if you will, a part of me that wanted to be creative, that wanted to be of service, that wanted to truly help people or make a difference in the world. And it always sounds so, when you're working full time and you mention it to coworkers, it kind of sounds a little crazy, because they react with, well, why do you want to go and do something else if you have a full-time stable job and you get paid every month and it's all good? But if you have this urge or this motivation or calling or whatever you want to call it, to contribute a little bit more and to kind of go a little bit deeper in that experience that we call life, then there are some questions that you start asking yourself, or I actually started asking myself. And I was in my mid-30s, so I was like, okay, what can I do? Okay, I have been working in marketing and communications for, God knows how long, 15 years. And I can do this really well, but how can I take this a little bit further and actually help people? And so this is where the idea for Communications Rebel was born, where I thought, I don't just want to promote, any random business. I want to help entrepreneurs, founders, consultants, coaches who are seeking profit and purpose, who want to make a difference in the world, who want to stand out by maybe starting or leading social change movements. And they all need brand in order to move their business and their purpose forward. So how can I help them, become clear on that brand identity? And how can I help them tell a powerful story to really connect with the people that they want to serve? So that was where I saw myself as a, almost like a link between those organizations and founders that want to make a difference. And here I am, I want to make a difference. So that's where the idea of Communications Rebel was born.
Wonderful. How did I not know that it was born from World Domination Summit? Because as you know, I'm a huge, more than a fan, I'm a believer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. We are believers. We are believers in this idea that there is more to work and more to life. And in fact, I feel like work and life I don't separate it anymore. At Communications Rebel, life is work, work is life,
Yes.
right? What I do is so ingrained in my belief system, in my personal values, that when I work with people, it doesn't feel like work anymore. It feels like fun.
I agree. And this whole thing about work-life balance, there's no thing, work-life balance. There's no balance there. It's more work-life integration. And as someone who has also attended World Domination Summit since 2014, it's really about how we can integrate life into our work, because too many of us spend a lot of time in cubicles. We don't get out to fulfill our passions. We don't refill our creative cup. And we actually end up losing some of our capability. We end up losing our ability to create and innovate, and even to really think outside the box and enjoy life. And I know for me, I don't want that to happen. So it's one of the reasons I do things like my EntreLife, because I want to hear from other people who are also living a remarkable life, which is one of the mottos behind World Domination Summit.
Exactly. Yeah. A remarkable life. And what does that mean to you, right? Every person has to define that and discover that for themselves. But what I found is that if I really am being honest with myself, then a remarkable life to me means not living a 9-to-5 job and not sitting in a cubicle and being restricted in my creative abilities. I felt like I was a butterfly, ready to break out of the cocoon. And I was waiting so long for somebody else to give me permission or to allow me to break out of that cocoon. And I think that's probably how a lot of us feel. We feel like we need permission from somebody, or we're waiting for permission, because it's just so much easier if somebody says, hey, go do it, right? You're now allowed to live that life that you want to live. Because the way that we're being brought up, I mean, I was raised in Germany, and I was brought up in this, in a society that was very much about norms and fitting in, and, staying in the status quo, not asking too many questions, not trying to change the status quo too much. At least not in the way that, breaks with conventional wisdom. So I feel that when you actually allow yourself to look a little bit outside of the box, then, magic can happen. And I'm not saying that it's easy. That's why we're all going to these events and these conferences, because we want to find inspiration, we want to find like-minded people, we want to find even tools and tips and support to get us on that journey of that really true, deep, like you said, integrated life.
For sure. And it's one of those very difficult things to do as well, because as we are seeing our possibilities, as we're seeing that butterfly waiting to break free, it's also really finding how are we going to be able to break free and support ourselves as well. And that, I think, is one of the scariest challenges. How do you go out, live that remarkable life, and still support yourself, still make sure that the basic bills are covered? Because unfortunately, we do live in a society where people want rent money. We have to pay for food. We need electricity and Wi-Fi, because those things are all things that cost money. So did you have an approach when you went out on your own to help overcome those potential blocks for people?
So I can speak for my own journey, which hasn't been easy, of course. I'm all about, speaking the truth about entrepreneurship, especially if you're going out as a solopreneur, which I am. And, you don't have in the beginning a lot of support, or you need to find support. It's not easy by any means. And anybody who would tell you differently, I think, is lying a little bit, or trying to sell you a magic bullet, which doesn't exist. So for me, though, what was really important, and that's probably where my sense of security comes in, and the way that I was raised, was that, okay, I can start this new venture, Communications Rebel, but I still will work my day job so that I can still pay my bills and basically try and validate this idea that I have, right? Go out and find potential clients, tell people about Communications Rebel and what I'm trying to do, and then see if, there is a potential for a business there. So I didn't just quit my job on Monday and then, start Communications Rebel on a Tuesday. I did put together my website. I did, have my business cards printed, and I was still working a full-time job while I was in LA, going to networking events, attending small entrepreneurial conferences or day retreats. And I was basically telling everyone about Communications Rebel. Now, in Los Angeles, when I started it, so that was around 2011, 2012, when I got serious about it, I found that the breeding ground for this idea of social innovation and this idea of businesses that are looking beyond just profit wasn't as fertile as it is now. I find that now that I am more, maybe I'm more immersed in that environment, in that community now. But I do think in the last, 5 years in particular, there has been a huge momentum towards social entrepreneurship, towards businesses that are looking to make a difference, right? If you just think of organizations or brands like Everlane in San Francisco, who's disrupting the fashion industry, and they are now starting to become big with their idea of radical transparency. And if you think of, let's say there's an organization, I think they're a nonprofit, but I also see nonprofits as important pieces of that model, right? There's a nonprofit that is called The Shoe That Grows. I don't know what the name of the nonprofit is, but they have a shoe that grows, and they are basically giving this shoe to underserved communities and the developed world, where a lot of kids still don't have shoes. And they recognize that the model that if you give them a shoe in a certain size, especially kids, they might grow out of that shoe in like 6 months. So why don't we develop a shoe that can grow with the foot, so that if we give a shoe, kids can wear that shoe for, at least 2 or 3 years until they grow out of it as their foot grows. So organizations like that are starting to looking at ways on how to make a social impact. And we learn more and more about those organizations. Last year, I was in Germany at the Global Social Business Summit, which is another idea of doing business a little bit different. That was basically spearheaded by Dr. Yunus. And he is basically spearheading this idea that businesses are basically putting back any profit that they make back into their businesses, and with that profit grow their businesses, right? So it's a circular business model. So all of these ideas I find are coming to fruition now, and that's a long way to answer your question, I guess, but I feel like in the last couple of years, so I basically quit my job 2 years ago after moving to Toronto. I was still working full-time for like a year, and then I quit my job 2 years ago now. And for 2 years, I've been doing Communications Rebel full-time. but it still hasn't been easy, right? Yes, I can pay my bills now, but I still make way less than what I made when I was full-time employed as a director of communications. And I make way less as I could make if I would find a full-time job again. But I'm not willing to compromise that again. So as long as I can pay my bills and I'm okay, I can do it. Now, granted, for full transparency, I'm also married, and I'm now lucky that my husband has a full-time job, and that, you know, that helps with the overall, you know, household income, of course. So again, it's not an easy journey, but I also find that where I see the most growth is when I connect with people, like, you know, people like yourself and the greater community, because the more the word spreads about each of our ventures and each of our businesses, the more we can help each other and support each other with, you know, finding clients and getting the word out and making connections and getting us projects.
For sure. And I'm betting that even if you're not making as much as you were, it's not an issue as much because you're also feeling so much more rewarded by what you're doing.
Absolutely. It's that. And it's that my personal fulfillment. I feel happier. I am not stressed out anymore about any job performances or any work culture problems. So I feel like, you know, I'm my own boss. I can design my own workday. I can control how much work I put in. If I put in more work and more focus on what I do, I certainly also get more output, right? So I am in control of how much I can take on. And then as I am in the business, so the other thing is that I would suggest for people who are listening, who are maybe thinking of going out on their own, is if you start a side hustle, let's say, and you start, you know, working in this idea of, okay, I want to do something that is fulfilling. You know, as soon as you start working on it, you are learning so much more than you could ever learn by just, you know, attending conferences or reading books or getting that theoretical background and framework, maybe taking online classes. I don't know how many online classes I took before I, you know, really made that jump onto going out and quit my job, because I always felt like, maybe I need to know just a little bit more before I can do it. Maybe I can just take this online course on, you know, how to structure this or that in my business. And there will always be new developments. There will always be new tools out there. The world will change. So you will always just learn. And the best way to learn is just by doing it, by trying things.
Perfect. So one of the things I also wanted to talk about was storytelling. I know that's something that is a key part of Communications Rebel, how to tell your story, inspire audience, create movements, and ignite change. So how has storytelling helped you in your own personal life?
Oh, in my own personal life?
Yes.
So I think that when it comes to storytelling, so what people sometimes think is that they need to tell a bedtime story, right? So storytelling is not about, you know, telling a fairy tale. In fact, it's the opposite. Storytelling is being really true to who you are and try and communicate with authenticity. And I know authenticity is such a buzzword, and, you know, it's thrown around as this aspirational standard that we should aspire to when we communicate in the world. But what authenticity to me really means is that I am connected to my purpose again, right? I'm always really clear on why am I doing this and what motivates me. And I also know that I have a few core values or principles that I apply in my personal life, like almost like a code of ethics, right? That is really important to me. That is basically the foundation of how I tell my story, right? And when I learned how to really become clear on what those are, what are those values that are really important to me, and what is the purpose, why am I doing what I'm doing, then suddenly when I talk about my life or my work, it everything becomes easier, because I'm not telling people, I'm not sugarcoating anything, right? I'm not trying to put forth a persona or somebody that is a better version of myself, but I actually can confidently step into my own truth and say, this is who I am. I'm at this, at this stage in my life at the moment, and I'm not apologizing for it. And this is, what made me who I am today, because I refer back to my experiences in the past. But then I am also fueled by my purpose, which is my vision for the future. So I think clarity is definitely something that has helped me, because for the longest time I was, sucked into this, I guess, mode of living that a lot of us are sucked in, especially in, I find, North America, more so than I felt in Germany when I was, working in Germany. But I felt like in North America, there's so much about, it's so much about, the consumer culture, and, who you are, what car you drive, which house you have, all of those things. Those are not important to my story. What's important to my story is, how do I feel? How does this other person feel that I'm talking to? Where can we maybe make a connection? Where is there a bridge, right, where we can meet, because we have an understanding of both of our experiences. So when I talk to my clients, some of them are individual consultants or coaches, so they're more looking towards building a personal brand. But some of my clients are organizations. But I always say it doesn't really matter. Even as an organization, you have human beings that are operating behind that organization. So even as an organization, you can tap into these human emotions and human, traits of why are we doing what we're doing. And I'm sorry, there's somebody.
No, that's okay. It's probably on mine too. You know how it is.
Yeah.
And that's why my EntreLife is live and unedited, because life happens.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so so that's why I'm telling them, even if you have an organization, you look into what drives you as an organization, what's your core purpose, and also what are your values, what is important to you. And if you know these things, then it's much easier to tell your story, because you speak to us as humans and not as, quote unquote, customers or leads.
Yes, yes. And when we value each other for each other and not for what things we bring to the table, or how much money you can get us to spend, it really makes you more relatable. It makes everything more relatable. And I've completely lost my train of thought there. But yeah, it's one of those days.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Good. I think relatable is a good word here, because I've had this conversation a lot, because one of my clients is tapping or helping organizations tap into what she calls 21st century skills, like empathy and understanding and critical thinking and all these things that AI cannot provide. So they will become more and more important as we move forward in a technology-driven world. So I think the relatable aspect is so critical, right? Because especially in our tech-driven world, if we think about even how we connect with people on social media or online, usually we find a connection if we can relate to another person's story or experience, right? So relation is a really big thing.
Oh, for sure. Yes. You need to be able to relate to the other person. You need to be able to feel, really to feel. And that's part of the storytelling for me. It's being able to evoke emotion, evoke a personal response from whoever you're sharing your story with. And it's no longer a world where people are just buying product, but they're buying into why people are doing it. Much like Simon Sinek talks about your why. If a business doesn't have a strong why nowadays, it's something that is not resonating with the younger generations. They want to know your why, and they want to see where you're doing business differently.
Exactly. Yeah. And it does make sense, because I think for the longest time we've been living without the why, or we were able to live without a why as organizations or brands, because everything was so new to us as we were getting into this, crazy technology age. And then when everything started to move online, I feel like the more noise we have in the online world and offline world now, the less able are we to actually, deal with that. And that's why we're looking for these emotional connections. We're looking for cues, because otherwise there's just so much noise. And that's exactly why I feel everybody, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you're an organizational brand, you're exactly right, that we need to understand why we're doing, and we need to be able to evoke emotions, because we need more humanity and not less in this day and age.
So I think we're coming to the end of our time here. So I have one more question for you before we wrap up. I would like to know what advice you would give to your 15-year-old self. Or what advice do you have for someone in the year 2025? 2020, yeah.
2025, yeah.
Yes.
Well, the advice that I would have for my 15-year-old self is that I would not worry so much about what other people are saying in terms of what you should do with your life. When I was 15, I had a lot of different voices that were contributing to what I should potentially do with my life, right? My parents, teachers, peers, everybody was on this discovery journey of, okay, this is like a big decision. What should I do with my life? I think that if you listen to yourself, you know what you're passionate about in this moment, and you can follow that. And trust me, life will change so dramatically. We, in our lifetime, life has changed so much, right, in the last 20 years. And it will change even more in the next 20 years. So we cannot predict entirely what's going to happen. And so, because we can't for sure predict, we can predict to an extent, but we can't for sure predict how fast things will change, what exactly will happen, how economies will change, and so forth. The best thing that we can do for our lives is to really, find something that we're so passionate about, that brings us joy, that brings us alive, that we have actually the motivation and the stamina to move that forward, right? And that might not mean that you cannot change down the road. But for me, it was when I was 15, I was so stuck on this idea that, okay, I need to find something now that I should do for the rest of my life. No, you don't have to. I have reinvented myself several times in my life, and I will probably reinvent myself again down the road. And as for 2025, I think, again, the best thing that we can do is to sometimes look up from social media. I think social media is a great tool, but sometimes it's great to step out of the social media bubble and try and seek out connections in real life, and also try and find ways to learn about these, what I just mentioned before, the 21st century skills. Like, how do you develop empathy? How do you become an ally? How do you, become a good friend? How do you, how do you make meaningful conversation? There's so many great coaches out there. If you can find those people that can help you with those skills, I would say go and, explore that, in addition to all the tech stuff that we probably all should be tapped into one way or the other. But I think the other portion is what people often miss out on.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us, Nina. And once again, our guest today was Nina Reyes of Communications Rebel. So check out her website to find out more about her, and make sure that you know your personal story as well.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
It was a pleasure talking to you.